Welcome to Expand Understanding Podcast. We changed that overlay. That's the Scuffed Hamlet. The music you were listening to, Wake FM, Liquid Drum Bass, number 69, 6 and 9, are also the Fibonacci spirals. One typically representing and anchoring things, 6 from spirit down to matter, and the 9 from matter, transmuting from matter to spirit. It's a good combination of numbers. And welcome to the Expand Understanding Podcast. I am Aaron Kessler, and Zach Mortimer is my co-host on here. Well, thank you everyone in the chat for being here. Willow and Brittany and me, because I commented in the chat from my phone. Welcome tonight. We also have the links below. If you like what you hear here, like, subscribe, check out the chats down below. Good to see you, Willow. Hi, Willow. Hit the links down below in the chat. We have several things there. We've got supporting the Shipibo people, one of the original indigenous tribes in South America. Zach and Jen have both been out there and have done extensive ayahuasca ceremonies, and with a 9th generation ayahuasquero out there. They have a village that they rely on tourism. Since COVID started a few months back, they have a hard time being able to keep up. $4.50 feeds a family for a month. $4.50 feeds a village for a month. And so those are links below that you can subscribe to that. It's a great place if you have been thinking randomly about where maybe you can spend some extra money or invest in people or things that matter in this world and helping people and taking care. There's many, many ways. The one we have is an awesome one. So really, whatever stands out to you, whatever resonates with you, then there's an option. So it's a beautiful dynamic in that regard. Let's see. Co-host Zach will be coming on soon. Texting me, he's like, all right, I'm ready when you are. I'm like,
hey,
cool.
Guys.
There he is.
I told you I was ready. Look how ready I am. Yeah. Well, I mean, sort of ready. My internet connection is down today, so I'm on my phone. And so you get a phone mic. That's life.
You gonna set the mic? I was thinking, are you gonna set the phone up on your camera stand? Are you doing video still or just phone?
I mean, I can do video if it's a huge deal, but I was probably just gonna leave it on my phone. Just like
I didn't say anything to you before. I just assumed that it would be on there. But yeah, it works. It's been an actual audio podcast. I'll just fix my stuff and I guess be the face on it. Oh, we'll link the Patreon link in the chat, so that is there also. Wonderful. Thank you, Willow. She is our wonderful admin and a really great person that I've gotten to know over the last few months, and really appreciate you being around, Willow. I think you're pretty great. Hi, Sam. Sam says hi, Aaron, Zach, and everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Willow, for the stuff that you do out of the kindness of your heart. Really appreciate that. It's really like I've done a lot of things on the internet in terms of like community building and trying to get a message out there, and it is actually kind of shocking at how little help you get with that when like you're trying to spread any kind of positive message or something. I also have done an awful lot of party promoting and things associated with that in my life, and it's way easier to get people to help you spread the message when it comes to shit like that. But when it comes to actually like having a positive psychological effect on someone's life, like it's so hard to get somebody to help with that stuff, especially just to get them to do it of their own behest. And so I really appreciate you for doing that. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, it's cool, and like it's creating a thing. I mean, Willow's part of the community and enjoys being here and interacting with people in there. I think she's probably made a bunch of friends and met new people. We all have, and so it's cool to be. I mean, anytime I've I spent most of most of you here probably know, but I spent most of my life in the church and in those dynamics, and all sorts of different churches, different streams, all types of churches. So it wasn't always just one church or one type. So I really got around in the church to experience the different waves of energy. Like
what
there's
a
really
whore.
different. Yeah, major church core. I was trying to find, and the whole dynamic on it was wherever the spirit is, like whatever's living, not just dead. Like you can see on movies where it's just dead. A lot of Catholic church, it's just the energy is just dead. It's just ritual. It's just there's nothing there that's like engaging you at a soul level. And so the churches where there's this. Really? Yeah, this is the thing in
I've
the
been
church.
to many churches. Really. Honestly.
All right, I'll fill you in. I've been to a lot. So there's like dead churches and living churches are one way they're talked about, or a church where the spirit is alive, the living spirit. And you can call that also the heart-brain coherence, where there's places where they do worship or music or interaction, but there's actual community and connection amongst people. So there's actual beautiful, real living growth there as human beings, becoming human beings. It's all within that paradigm and that framework, depending on the denomination. It has its own nuances. But you can tell regardless of denomination, when you're in a church that has the Spirit in it, it's alive.
Yeah, you can.
There's
I mean, I
actually
feel like you
living
can
things
even do
there.
that with like a piece of music, right? Like
Hmm.
you can tell when like a track on an album is just like another track they made, and when it's a track that you can tell that they were sitting there listening to it, like, damn, this is a heater. You know what I mean? Let's hear that part
Right?
again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah, this is a heater. This is so amazing. You know what I mean? And you're listening to it like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is pretty good. You know what I mean? Like you're not as engaged with it as they are, but like, you know, you can tell the difference in those tracks. Like you can feel it, right?
Yeah. Brittany said, "We know you're Jesus." Hashtag cult. So I've been to a lot, and that's we've talked about that in other shows and dynamics. Yeah, there's a lot of different movements and flavors, if you will, just like music, and just like I mean, I guess it's just like the internet, right? There's a lot of different, like you're saying, self-help communities or things that are beneficial, and I guess that's more as this has been developing. That's kind of what this has been. I guess a self and help others community. I guess that
Yeah.
there's a connection around the podcast and the different shows, the other people's shows, and um, so yeah, it's cool. It's great. I guess it's interesting. So I've taken all like I've gone to a lot of different churches, each with their own flavor. Now we're creating a church, if you will, a communal gathering space that has its own flavors. We got a bunch of different shows on the channel and totally different flavors. So it seems to be a theme, I guess, that follows my life.
Yeah. Well, I think you know, if you orient around something, then the places that you end up oriented around that, and different people, but it's really not people. It's kind of more like the way that they approach, like, wait, all of this gets mapped really well astrologically. Will have more of an influence on the groups that they hang out with than other people, but every person in the group influences the group. So like
Mm.
we are the byproduct of our spaces, but our spaces are the byproduct of us.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting in a communal dynamic too. I mean, there's one thing to be, so like I said, I've been a participant or a visitor to a space that's already been created and tasted a lot of flavors, if you will. Now the space that I am creating digitally, we are creating on here in that same way has a lot of flavors. So I guess that makes sense.
Yep.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yup. Just logic. Just a
Yeah,
way of
totally
thinking.
just logic.
Stupid.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I mean, I
What's going
think
on?
logic is one of our most valuable assets, but it's also, as a byproduct of that double-edged sword, if it's a really powerful sword, that means that you can cut your fucking head off with it really easy, right? Like, that's what you can do with a really powerful sword, right? Like, if you have a powerful sword and it's so sharp, like, there's a higher chance you're gonna fuck yourself up with that thing than some shitty sword, you know?
A little bit. And also different
So,
kinds of swords, right? I mean, you've got the Braveheart sword, but that's not really good for close fighting or speed fighting. I mean, they all have different functions and purposes too.
sure. Yeah, well, I mean, fucking, if you want to start with the abstractions of sword fighting, you're going down a fucking 10,000-year-old hole that's already been taken. Like, that's like walking into an ant colony. You know what I mean? Like, the hill
Mm.
looks like a sword, but then you're like, oh, I wonder what's inside of here down this tunnel. And once you get inside of there, you recognize that it's like this enormous complex that looks like an entire mind, and it's already all been looked at by all these little ants, which are just thoughts, basically, right? And fuck,
Mm.
it's like this huge place that from the outside you're like, huh, swords. At least that's what happened with me. Like I used to think swords
Yeah.
were cool, like every male kid, right? You're like, oh yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
fucking swords, right? That's basically just like
Totally.
a sword laying on the ground, though. And then, but like, if you really like the swords, you end up then like at some point in time you want to learn about the thing and how it works, and you want to try to use it. And maybe you want to master that sword, and then you realize, well, there's a lot of different kinds of swords. I mean, you got these big ones, you got these small ones. Like, which one you want to use? You know what I mean?
When
And
I've heard, oh, sorry, go ahead, keep going.
oh, well, just like this has already been looked at like so many times, you know. I mean, like
Yeah.
there's a lot of great swordsmen over time. There's a guy named Musashi who is very much so a philosopher and a swordsman, and himself, he fucking like, well, there's even like modern day cartoons made about this guy and shit, like Brave Fencer Musashi. Like
Huh.
Musashi was a great swordsman. He was also a philosopher. He wrote a book called like what is it, like the Seven Rings or something? Is it seven?
Huh.
I don't remember what it's actually called. Really like short book, but very good. He's kind of your standard like, you know, Eastern philosopher. So he's trying to say like a lot in a little, and the metaphor
Yeah.
is very much so like sword fighting, and he's known as being like a really good sword fighter as well. And even inside of like samurai culture and all these other types of sword wielding cultures, fencing culture as well, realize Masons are huge into fencing, like huge
Huh.
into fencing.
I
You
did
know,
not know that. I know a lot about
fence,
Masons. I did not know that.
yeah, huge into that. I mean, life is a fucking sword fight. A fencing match is literally just two dudes at a negotiation table. That's your whole life.
Yeah, no
Like that
doubt.
is your whole life can be understood through a fencing match, no problem. Like literally your whole life. It's crazy,
Yeah.
you know.
Awesome.
So some of their symbolic shit that you see is actually like is origination wasn't in like their specific little secret societies. It's actually like a practice inside of fencing. Like
Hmm.
well you see this thing with the black eye that they associate to like the pedos and shit now.
Yep, yep.
Okay, well, where this actually starts is in basically Nazi Germany, is where it was carried into modern day shit, but it was actually even
Hmm.
before that, and it was a cut on the cheek. And you know, guys that were like deep in on this side of this kind of secret society in Nazi Germany, these guys were studying Vril and all this other weird stuff,
Hmm.
which isn't weird stuff, it's just other stories for the same stuff. But nevertheless, one of their markers was this, and that cut was like the cut of an established fencer. Like when you had learned to this maximum level that basically like you were untouchable, the way to show that was basically to symbolically allow yourself or your master to cut you on your cheek as though you had been struck in your face, right? So like you knew what it was like to get struck in the face, and you had the full wisdom of how to avoid having that happen again, basically. And it's literally
Yeah.
called a fencer's scar. Like that's what the cut on the cheek is even called in modern day when it's like symbolic. Like this is called a fencer's scar. I mean, fencing,
Huh.
like realize like sword fighting and getting good at sword fighting back even in like the time of the lords and ladies, you know what I mean, and all this shit. Like
Yeah.
to be a great swordsman was highly revered. Look at what they're doing in like Game of Thrones, right? Like there's fucking Jamie Lannister, and Jamie Lannister is like widely revered for being the greatest swordsman in the land. So when his enemies really want to punish him, what do? They cut off his sword hand. You know what I mean? Like this is all like it's the same story, right? But
Yeah.
the great swordsman has always been very revered because, well, I mean, on a very surface level, a guy that's really good with a sword, well, he can fucking kill you if he wants to. You know what I mean? But then on a
Yeah.
more philosophical level, for a guy to be really good with a sword isn't so much about him learning how to wield the sword, but rather about him learning how to wield himself.
Yeah.
And that's my
Yeah.
paltry attempt to contribute to the land of super poetic stuff about
Oh,
fucking sword fighting.
you totally can. I mean, they've made literally, I've probably heard 100 sermons throughout my life about sword fighting, incorporating that into the dynamic you're saying of a mastering your own life and different. There's just a million ways you can go off of that because it's such a good 3D metaphor for so
Yeah.
many things. And like, I think one of the ones was it talks about scripture, certain scriptures and things being weapons and the type of sword. And in the New Testament, again, the Greek and the dynamic, and the sword was actually like a short Roman soldier sword or something that's not doesn't seem super cool. It doesn't seem like some badass sword or whatever. But they get into actual all the skill sets that you can do with the sword and the different dynamics and what you can do with it and why it's so potent because of the ability, the strategies you can use with that sword. And there's just tons of stuff to break off of that whole dynamic. So yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. That's why, like, some of these, to get really direct to actual swords and their functionality, some of these swords that are like really, really odd shapes, in the right
Hmm.
situation, they are vastly superior to a normal sword. Like these
Hmm.
ones that have like a hooked blade at the end, or like you're familiar with a sai. It was the things that
Hmm.
Raphael used in the Ninja Turtles. Those, like
Yep.
in the right situation, those are vastly superior because they can literally like catch and entrap the other person's weapon which gives a very high propensity to be able to disarm or otherwise control their weapon, which means they lost. Like, if you're in a fight with someone else and they are capable of controlling your weapons, you lost. That's what just happened. That's all it takes.
Game over.
Game is fucking over. Like, you can't move the chess pieces to the positions that you want if your opponent has tied your hands behind your back. You lost the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
the fucking game is over with. So if that's why, like I say, situationally, those are fucking amazing, right? But they require a very skilled user, and they require that they're actually in the right situation as well. Otherwise, it's just like kind of an unwieldy sword or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, yeah, unwieldy, right? So I mean, the ability to whatever weapon you have to be able to wield that weapon.
Yeah. And to speak like a fucking assassin, because it really is in my heart, I love the swashbuckling and cunning thought of an assassin. Sometimes the most effective sword is actually the smallest one.
Yeah.
And sword fighting's not about having the biggest sword. It's about being effective with a sword.
Yeah, and being able to win. So whatever that looks like. So if you know whatever tool you are,
that's
you can be
effective.
effective with it. Yes.
Yeah, the winning is to obtain effectiveness, right? Like, that's what a win is in this regard.
Maximum effectiveness or superior effectiveness, I guess.
That depends on your school of thought. If you're talking about the maximum, really on multiple dimensions, not only in like basically the subjectivity of what is maximum, but also in the idea that, like, to some people, you know, a win is a win. I don't care how I get it. And to some other people, they're like, oh, well, a win must be done rightly and all this other shit or whatever. You know what I mean? They have like a bunch of rules to what their win must be created on, what kind of platform it needs, all kinds of crazy stuff. And I say crazy because it's like, it's just so vast, not because they're psychotic for thinking it or anything. It's actually all logical rationalization and makes very good logical sense for why they think that the win needs to have this. Otherwise, it really isn't a win. But there's the other school of thought that's like, it doesn't matter, man. If you get the result, who gives a fuck? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no doubt.
I like if you get the result, who gives a fuck one, mainly just because, like, well, it gets more wins by a long shot.
Right. Well, I guess
it really does.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, ultimately,
but I also realize that's just me. You know what I mean? Like, I just like that one better. It's not actually any better than the other one.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I feel like the other one is going for a very, like, kind of sanctimonious result, right? Like, they're trying to obtain this, like, utopic, it's specifically this, and there's all these reasons why it needs to be that, when really at the end of the day, like, the effectiveness is actually more paramount. But again, I realize, like, when I say really at the end of the day the effectiveness is more paramount, that's completely tainted by my own subjective perspective of reality. It's not actually paramount. I just think it is.
Yep, fair enough.
I could make a very strong case for it too, but I would also know that my case is, like, technically not right. But it sounds right, and it's half right. It's as right as you can get. You know,
at the very least, it's right for you, and it's effective for you to help you win in ways that you define that in your life. So,
sure, it's right, given the proper axiomatic agreement as to what defines rightness.
Way to structure that sentence, Zach. Well done.
So it's as right as it can get, because really every bit of rightness agrees to that same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
In order for there to be a right, we've agreed on a left without really agreeing on the left.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I like to think about reality as, like, I've explained this one before to you, maybe even on this podcast, but the idea of, like, drawing a line on the piece of paper. Do you remember that one?
Continue.
Just the idea that, like, we spend a lot of our time trying to, like, identify and define things, right? This is functionally like we're looking at a shape or something drawn on a piece of paper. So if we were to really simplify that drawing, we'll just call it a line, right? It's literally just one line. And we're trying to figure out what the line is. But the line, as it stands on the paper, does just as good of a job, and maybe not even a complete one, of defining exactly what the line is as all the space that is not the line, right? Like
Yeah.
it's only a line on the piece of paper because there's a whole bunch of the paper that's not the line. And if I just look at the part that's not the line, then I can really see exactly where the line is without ever looking at the line. It's all the place that isn't not the line, right?
Mm.
So I can define the line by either where it is or basically the rest of the paper around it when I draw a line on a piece of paper. And this same concept basically applies to everything in our life, that you can learn about anything through the positive or the negative space of it. Like it doesn't have
Yeah.
to go right because you can learn from its wrongness, and it doesn't have to go wrong because you could also learn from its rightness. You actually learn from both of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can learn the exact same things from both of them. You can learn all of it, as much as you can learn, but it's still only just like half right. It's one half of it.
Yeah, and it's not ringing a super bell, but it makes sense. Like whether I've heard it the first time or not, the concept totally resonates and settles, and I'm jive with it. But you may have, because it makes me think of this thing that I feel like I probably have said on some past podcasts recently. But in the Hebrew oral traditions, they talk about the text itself being black fire on white fire, and without one, you can't see the other because they give it contrast. That's what brings the definition.
Mm. Yep. Yeah, exact same topic, 100%. Like I don't remember that part in their stuff. That doesn't mean that it's
Hmm.
not there by any stretch of the imagination. I haven't looked at all their stuff, not even close.
Yeah.
And I don't remember you saying it, but I don't remember everything you've ever said. But I know that that is the same concept that I'm talking about. It's the idea of symbiotic partners that we perceive as battling opposites. To really come to
Yeah.
know, as the Hindus call it, Kurukshetra, or basically the spiritual battleground, is to realize that the whole of the battle transpiring is functionally carried out by the actors that are engaged in the battle. So when side black fights against side white, it presents the contrast that allows them both to play out the storyline of being the fighter or the combatant. So in their opposition, they are symbiotically driving the potential for the other to exist. So they're not actually opposed, right? They're like,
Mm.
they're brothers that work best when they work against each other. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Or whatever. Symbiotic partners.
Yeah, symbiosis,
We're
and
not
it's
actually even seeking like actual partnership in life. Like our little utopic like idea that we have of, the perfect twin flaming ultimate coherence. Oh my God, they get me so perfectly. Like
mm,
that thing, we're not really we're looking for symbiosis in the long run. Like that's the pinnacle of working with someone or being coherent, right? So if we're seeking down
yeah,
that line, we're actually looking for symbiosis. Right now we're so far away from symbiosis that we're actually still just kind of looking for the partnership, but the partnership is really just a foundation for the potential of symbiosis,
yeah,
because symbiosis is more than teamwork, it's synarchy, right? So like in teamwork, we can work together. In synarchy, it's impossible for us to not work together. Even when I do the exact opposite of what you do, it helps you do what you do. So no matter what way I go, I'm going to help you. That's
yeah.
symbiosis.
So so you said synarchy. How do you spell that?
Synarchy. It's not a real word. It was made up by Richard Rudd, I think. I don't think it's a real word, but a lot of other people have utilized it. And when we're saying synarchy, we're basically saying like, well, I personally redefined it as symbiosis because I think there was already a word for it. But his
Yeah,
angle is like a play on the idea of synergy, right? But
yeah,
I don't, okay, there is a definition for it actually. Joint rule or government by two or more individual parties. Yeah, that's what I guess I understand where he's saying that, right? Like he's saying, so it's the idea that in a relationship, it's not anymore about you and me, it's about us. And so if you
yeah,
and I are both working for us, then we have no problems. But if you or I is acting as us but working for me or you, then a problem will end up happening. But inside of teamwork, technically that is okay. Inside of synarchy, then you're taking a heightened level where I'm looking out for your best interest because your best interest is half of my best interest. So I can't possibly look out for my best interest without looking out for your best interest as well, right?
Yeah,
And that's
totally.
more than teamwork.
And it's another way. So I like the synarchy better. And we'll see. Okay, even in the Greek here, so we've got sunarchine and sunarchia. It's interesting. So and ruling jointly, but there's other words. Okay, so
I think truly
all
symbiosis is actually even a step above this. Like I would
right,
say there's like
okay,
teamwork, then there's synarchy, then there's symbiosis. And synarchy is kind of doing this like everything, nothing, void space in a certain way because it's like well, it's claiming to be like the end all be all of that, but I really don't think it is because we're really with all opposites. I think that if there was the potential for not teamwork, you would think that the opposite is teamwork. But the actual opposite of not teamwork is the impossibility for not teamwork to exist. Meaning that everything that we did worked together. Like it wouldn't even be possible for us to work against each other, would be the
yeah,
opposite of not having teamwork, right?
yeah. Well, it's
So
interesting
it's the same thing.
the
Synarchy is
progression.
kind of a half measure.
Yeah. Yeah, 'cause it's so it's here symbiose, companion, symbion, live together, symbiosis, a living together or companionship together in that dynamic. And where like I guess in true or autonomous symbiosis, what we have in our bodies for the most part, when we're not, we don't have a fever, we're not fighting off some kind of overabundance of a virus or something negative, that everything in our body, the 100 trillion plus cells in your body, of which only 0.1% have your own DNA, I believe it's 0.1 of your actual DNA from your mother and father. I mean, that alone is crazy. The actual body that your consciousness resides in, you walk around every day, only 0.1 of that is what we typically think of as my cells or my unique DNA. They can get that obviously from different parts of our body and the way they do swabs and stuff, but that we're made up of a massive symbiosis. Obviously, it works well enough. Maybe part of like the reason we die at 80 years, give or take. I mean, yeah, we take in toxins and poisons, our body breaks down. I mean, all that for sure. But maybe another part of that is because of things we've picked up over generations, bacteria, gut
Mm-hmm.
microbiome, things that are literally in our cells that they're not in actual symbiosis with our bodies. So as we go through this progression astrologically, all this stuff that we're moving into, new age, all that kind of shit, new era, new Vedic cycle, new or Kali Yuga. I mean, just all those dynamics. Part of that is the things that are no longer in symbiosis within our bodies. We're literally just, I don't know if they die off. I don't know. They'll move out. They'll move out. If the vessel in this home is progressing,
Why don't you
you
want
know,
to say die off?
I guess die off. I mean, die, like if energy is never dead or energy is always exchanged, then maybe it transmutes or moves out of the environment within our body. So maybe it die. I mean, call it die, but more it's just it's not in symbiosis, so it moves out, moves on, dies, transmutes. They all kind of work, I guess.
Well, in a certain sense, like die can't be referring actually to energy. So if you're saying in this regard, like you're identifying the energy in some way, right?
Yeah, that's
And it's
true.
really
And
like the identity of the energy that's dying because the energy doesn't get destroyed.
okay, so the identity. So if it's something in your cells or your biology, I mean, there's a what we would define as a living
Yeah, it's not a
organism.
problem with the energy. It's that it's your energy. It's my energy. It's my story. Blah 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 blah. Energy I'm experiencing, right? The energy
Yeah,
is not the problem. Your identification, interpolation, integration, and byproduct experience of holding that inside of you, quote unquote, or
yeah.
having that identity with it, that's the problem. So it's not the energy that's the problem. It's the your that's a problem. So
As
the
opposed to
dying is the
being
your. It's not the energy. The energy just keeps doing what it's doing. It's just not attached to your story anymore. That story died off, basically. We always
interesting.
like we talk about like grounding trauma, rooting trauma, all these kinds of things. Like where do you think where does it go? Like what happens with it? If you take the time to think about that, do you think that you're actually destroying it? I think you should think about that more. Do you think that you're turning it into something different? And so then this is basically functionally offsetting what would supposedly otherwise be a balanced system through your active transmutation. And even if that is happening, that balanced system would insinuate that as a byproduct of that, it's popping up somewhere else, right? It's like a peg that you're sticking through a hole. Yeah, it disappears on one side, but that's because it comes out the other side, right? This kind of
Yes.
function. So what are you really doing with it? Where's it really going?
So on a bioelectrical level, through myofascial release or just different things in your body when they're not cycled through into the earth, the negative ions and all those dynamics, that there's a movement literally of energy. There's an energy that can manifest in your cells, be static energy on your cells. You can experience it in emotions and chemical reaction and
Well,
all
I'm
that
not saying
dynamic.
that people don't experience it. I'm saying when you get it out of you, do you think it just disappears? I mean, it just goes somewhere else, is what I'm
Right, totally.
saying. Like, it just
Yeah,
goes
yeah.
somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't
Yeah, it
really get
doesn't.
destroyed or anything. It just goes somewhere else, no matter what mechanism that you have of like cleansing that out, clearing that out, or whatever. There's another thing behind it that basically says like, yo, this system's not broken, it's symbiotic. And like, so that just moved over here. Like it stayed in balance. You just moved it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, totally. So you're allowing it to go to somewhere else that's symbiotic for it. It's no longer symbiotic for you, or whatever that
Some
means.
places want to be that way, is my take on it. Like there's benefits to just moving it somewhere else. I like to move
Yeah,
myself somewhere else. I do it all the time. Yeah.
no doubt.
I think everybody does. Everybody, like, their whole goal in life is to move themselves somewhere else, right? Like, if you're not completely content with where you're sitting right now, which as a human, I don't think you probably are, like, life is kind of about like doing stuff. Otherwise, why? So we're trying to like go somewhere, do something, create something, experience something, do whatever. So we're always trying to do that anyways.
Yeah.
I think we have a
And
problem with being stagnant. That's why I think attachment, holding on to things, is a problem, and why these types of releases, be they physiological, myofascial kind of thing, energetic grounding, energetic clearing, Reiki, maybe God came down and washed away the demons. I don't really care what the story is. I think that's why all of these things work and why all of
yeah,
these things happen, is because as long as it's moving, it's not that much of a problem. It will go where it's supposed to go, but if it's here, realize it got here by way of going where it was supposed to go. But that doesn't mean it has to stay here. You know what I
yeah,
mean? It's going to point out your inefficiencies. This is kind of like what you can learn from feng shui. And feng shui is this idea that like inside of your space could be your own personal vessel, your temple, your body, your energetic field. Maybe you call it a Merkaba or a toroid or an aura or whatever you call it. Or maybe you call it your house, and that's fine. Either way, your space. And the idea that energy is coming into your space and it's trying to recirculate through that space. And if it gets caught up in spaces, it has effects. And those effects can be monitored, studied, managed, manipulated. So if we allow energy to get stuck, these effects they're not necessarily problematic, actually. There's ways, for instance, like it's a common thing inside of feng shui, if you're trying to bring money into the household, is to place a set of low-hanging chimes in the primary thoroughfare so people have the opportunity to accidentally run into it.
hmm.
And the idea with this is that like you want to encourage the energy to be flowing into your house, right? So the primary thoroughfare that's entering your house, you place the chimes there that people accidentally hit because it makes the experience of them coming in through that space more profound. It functionally amplifies the experience. They hit the chimes, cling, cling, cling. Whoa, whoa, sorry, sorry, sorry. Hey, 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 sorry about that. And then you react to it with like, no problem. I want things coming into my house. I really like
Hmm.
those chimes. I appreciate you running into them. I appreciate you bringing this experience to me. Then you make it even more of an event because you're trying to encourage energy to flow into your house all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But realize when you're doing this, you're encouraging energy to flow into your house all the time. That doesn't necessarily mean all of it is going to be money dollars good that I want coming into my house. It will also be the messenger that brings that. They might have other messages with them as well. They might not tell you that they're bringing those ones. They might just have an odor on their clothing that gets left inside of your house or something like that. They're bringing other
yeah,
energies with them. So if you're going to encourage energy to come into your space, it's in your best interest to check their ID at the door, right? Basically, set up some kind of way of being aware of what energy is coming in as a byproduct of me encouraging energy to come in. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And realize we're always encouraging energy to come in. You can answer this question very easily for someone. You simply go, do you want to be alive tomorrow or in 5 seconds from now? And they're like, yes. Why? and you're like, okay, that substantiates that you're inviting more energy in, right? You can't be
Yeah.
alive 5 seconds from now unless more energy gets you from here to there. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
you are inviting more energy in simply by your want to continue to be alive, or your want to continue to experience. Realize we actually want this so bad that we put it way off into the future and way off into the past. I had these way past lives. I'm going to get reincarnated another 150,000 times. I'm immortal. I'm going to be here forever. Infinite consciousness, all this kind of idea. We put that like way out there because we're really inviting the fucking energy in. These same people who say that they're infinite are also making a claim that they want all of the energy. Well, guess what? All of the energy has a lot of bullshit in it that you probably don't like. That's the reality of the situation. So when you say, I want to be all in the one and one in the all, which this is just as much a warning to myself as it is to anybody else, because I actually say this, I don't know whether anybody else does. When I say that, I'm inviting in all of the bad shit too, or what everybody would call bad. When I say I'm one with the all and all with the one, I'm well aware that I'm inviting over all of the bad people too. And so I've already set up the space in such a way that it will be amenable to the bad people. They will be managed properly. We will be aware of what they're doing, so on and so forth. We've already done the work to make sure that we can accommodate what it is going to bring in, rather than just being like, oh, that's it. I had 2 tabs of LSD last night. I realized I'm everything, and I'm going to completely take the weight of the universe onto my shoulders. That's me now. I am everything, one with the all, infinite being, creator, ready for everything. Because are you though? Do you believe that? I mean, serious question. When anybody who said anything even remotely down the lines of this, when you make an identification of yourself, do you really believe you're capable of being that? Or is that a thing that you're claiming to be that you are not? No? Because the universe will probably acquiesce to your request to be that powerful, which also means that responsible. You're asking for a strong sword. It's so strong that you're covetous of it. You don't even have it and you claim that you do. That is like that is so covetous. You know what I mean?
It's interesting. One of the the verse in the scriptures talks about that we should covet. Like one of the things, like you think coveting typically is bad. Do not covet your neighbor's wife and those kind of things. But it says that you should covet to prophesy or to learn how to prophesy. And the King James, and the actual word there is covet, and being a positive dynamic to seek to be able to prophesy or to understand. I think I don't know. We could really back that off into a generality, but seeking to connect to your own spirit, to your own intuition, to be able to proclaim truths that are maybe unseen or unspoken or intuitively connected to. But literally, the point is that it tells you to covet as a positive dynamic. Just an interesting correlation to that word.
I think we have to take the whole of their statement and recognize it's not entirely compartmentalized, right? Like they say specifically, do not covet thy neighbor's wife, right? What else do they say about coveting besides that? That's the only part that I know that we're like drawing from, that it's negative.
Right. Well, that's doing like word cross references, and really the Bible is like, it's a pretty incredibly interdimensionally structured book.
It's an amazing book. It's one of the best books on the planet.
And we can cross reference words, especially original Hebrew and Greek and stuff. That's where you find. I mean, that's how they have their own ways of understanding the code, the Bible codes, or interpreting the scriptures, is understanding the different cross references of words. I mean, the paradigm within that, the most of the fundamental Christians believe about the Bible, is that everything within the Bible. Sorry, go ahead.
What I'm kind of saying here, like on a more simplistic level, is that I think when they're saying this, do not covet thy neighbor's wife, or thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, what they're really warning against, like the worship of Kahin. Like, don't lust for the thing that is outside of yourself, right? Like, don't covet your neighbor's wife, covet your own fucking wife. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, don't, and wife, like, it's very interesting word association talking about that, wife and why, right? Like, don't covet someone else's why for reality. You know, like, have your own why. You know what I mean? Like, seek your own fucking shit. So I think it's really more just a warning against Kahin than saying that coveting is per se bad. Huh?
And it's funny, a Y in electrical obviously often denotes there's connected into three-phase power. So when you have a Y tap
Yeah.
versus
Life is a
Y2K.
bunch of whys, man. Like you're in one place and you've already made the decision to get here. It's substantiated. This is what you are, right? But in the next moment, you could either be better than that or worse than that. You could be healthier or sicker. You could be richer or poorer at the next second, right? So you're always standing at some place, a straight line, that's going to go one of two directions, but it sure as fuck ain't going to go straight. It's going to get divided in that next second. So your entire life is a Y. Like, it's like, oh, I had
Yeah.
fucking bad psychedelic experiences with this for a period of time. Just like the most, just crazy, gigantic, infinite fucking lattices of Ys and shit. And when I would like focus on them, I'd be taken into experiences in my fucking life and others kinds of lives where you would see like this decision making planned out, but it would snapshot and shit like every time it got to a breach, right? But that was so often. It was like every fucking word that people were saying would be like every word that I'm saying, right? Like wherever there was a big inflection, there would be like a pause going like, stop, look at it, realize that a decision's being made right here. And then in the next, like not even a second later, it would be, look, a major decision is being made right here. And in terms of their talking and shit, like it's not just the words that I choose to say to you, it's how I say every fucking word. Did I say it's how I say every fucking word? Or did I say it's how I say every fucking word? This is a completely different sentence. So when I said fucking, not only was the choice of that word, but also the micro choice of the inflection, how the first syllable rolled into the second syllable, how hard the end of the word was. All of these were these Y snapshots where I had a chance to sculpt my reality. I wasn't ready for a fucking sword that big, so I was unbelievably overwhelmed, mysticized, lost in wonderment, felt like I was in another alternative reality, felt like I was getting sucked out of lives and into other ones with snapshotting experiences that like I could stop the experience for any choice of time, spin around it, look at it from every angle, get inside of the bodies that were there, look at it from their perspective, understand their thoughts, omniscience, and the ability to completely stop the situation every time that a choice was being made like that. And honestly, if you took the time with it, you could make a fucking single situation where it literally was one Y. You could sit there and ponder that fucking thing for like the rest of your life, just looking at like how'd the grass see it? How'd this dog see it? How did this affect the life as for this fucking propane barbecue that was sitting there based off of the way that the guy said this word? And you could just get completely lost in wonderment and a whole fucking infinite rabbit hole of thought based off of any one of these changes for any of the fucking things looking at the thing that was determining the change. And it's just like, I was so lost to the wonderment of this. It was only after like many experiences of this, then the great experience of this flooding over into my fucking dream states. Fuck me in the asshole with a cactus. Like the worst shit, dude. I was already so sick of it. I was literally doing psychedelics at that point in time, kind of to escape my reality, but also like work on it. But I didn't want to work on it here because I was real sick of here. And then the psychedelic experience that I was like, ugh, this sucks, then spilled over into my life that I was like, now I was not doing psychedelics because I didn't want that. And that was here even though I wasn't doing psychedelics. And it was basically forced onto my fucking plate and wasn't really like that great, but also great at the same time because like I get it now. I'm making so many decisions. It's not about whether I want to take responsibility for those things. I already have the responsibility. I do not accept the responsibility that I actually have. I treat it like it's some job I could choose to do. No, I mean, like, I can choose or choose not to do it, but it doesn't mean like something else is going to handle it. That means shit's not going to go right. That's exactly what that means. There's not another person here to pick up your fucking slack. It's just you. It's just your life. No one else is sitting around going like, oh shit, I saw that, yesterday you didn't want to make 7 decisions, so I made them for you with your best interest in mind. And I'm completely trying to help you out for all of your goals that I don't even subjectively understand because I'm not you and I don't want the same things as you. I want what I want, so I can only possibly work for myself. So I think I'm helping you, but actually I'm doing that with my subjective perspective of myself projected onto you. And then I'm trying to help myself outside of myself because I'm avoiding myself by trying to help you, which I'm not doing. But trust me, I'm here to help. Are you sure?
Yeah. It's
This
true. And like,
happens
there's
all
so
day,
much.
every day. This is not
Yeah, I
far
was
from
gonna say,
anybody that's ever hearing this is reality. It's
it's
crazy.
like, well, that's where we create subroutines, if you will, right? Things that run in the background that are choices that we make to projectile us through the day, kind of unconsciously. I think you get into certain habits, whether that's through force of circumstances or just circumstance or force of circumstances, but as a result of circumstances, a job that you're in consistently that has a schedule, and or activities that you participate in, and or things you choose to do that you make some kind of schedule, or however you run your day. There are subconscious things that guide that you have chosen. There are choices. I mean, sometimes I guess
Yeah.
sometimes can be guided by trauma and things we don't necessarily know. But in general, like our life, most of our life is structured. The choices we make through the day are by choices we have made in the past. They then eventually sink into the subconscious, and then they're habit patterns. But yeah, we're constantly making choices.
Yeah. I think one of my like favorite abilities that I have sculpted is that if I recognize a pattern that I'm doing that I can't discern exactly how I created that on purpose, and I like that idea still, I can just fucking obliterate that pattern immediately. And I love it because like if I'm not the person who made that pattern, I'm just like, nope, I don't even care. Like it can't possibly be perfect if I didn't purposely consciously sculpt it. Because one of the requirements of perfection for me is that it was purposely and consciously sculpted by myself. So it's super easy just to throw out some kind of like conditioning once I realize I'm doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But as soon as I realize I'm doing it, I'm like, fuck yeah, a wall for the wrecking ball. Here we go, boys. Kool-Aid! Boom! Smashing through that fucking wall immediately.
Gotcha.
And like,
Dude, it's
I
like,
love it, dude. I'm just like the Kool-Aid man. I got a big old smile on my face. I'm all jolly and red, dude. I'm just like so happy. Like, look at this wall I'm gonna destroy. Yeah! Who wants a fruity
when it's
drink?
nice. That's the thing. Like when you're looking for, always looking for, and I think I probably do this, is trying to give words to it. And other people too. But like when there's always you're constant. You want to have, like you've talked about, we want to have as much awareness as like as actually humanly possible in any given moment, or like just for the things in your life or whatever. Part of that awareness is all self-awareness. So you see things in your life that are causing destructive habit patterns,
Yeah.
and eventually, so like you get the wrecking ball ready. I'm happy to have the wrecking ball. It's part of, I guess, like maybe that's part of the symbiosis, right? So you can't just find problems, and you need tools to deal with them. If we're going to just pair this for this metaphor or whatever down to one tool, then let's say the wrecking ball, and you have to grab the wrecking ball, have that ready, so when you find it, you can smash it instead of just finding all these walls, if you will,
Yeah.
or destructive habit patterns. But you're not willing to pick up the wrecking ball. I don't really want to destroy it. I mean, I kind of like it. I mean, that stuff goes on
People think of this
subconsciously,
destruction as all like a wholly negative thing, though, but it's really not.
right? Because you're destroying something that has been holding you back, or you're transmitting that energy. It's not dying in a sense, but you're destroying those neurological patternings and you're repatterning them to something that is more coherent and beneficial for your overall progression in your life, whatever that means to you. Long pause. You still there, Zach? If you're there, can't hear you. While you're figuring that out, I had up here for a while. Angela put, what about Syzygy? Syzygy, that's how you pronounce it, which we've got on screen. And this is really cool. So we talked about synarchy, symbiosis, and now syzygy. And this is actually in the Greek here. So it says up here the nouns, syzygy plural, syzygies, conjunction or opposition, especially the moon with the sun. The planets were aligned in syzygy. And then the Greek, though, I find interesting. So you've got sun, solar, with it together. And then to yoke with the sun, which I really dig that. I'll have to throw this out to Kevin and Frank, too. To yoke with the sun, syzygy. So that's interesting. The sun in our own life, the actual physiological, real sun and dynamic. Zach's back. Gone that
Yeah,
out?
my phone got hot and closed.
Oh,
StreamYard really makes phones hot. Like just a side tip about that. If anybody ever is using StreamYard, or Aaron, if you're like bringing people on here,
good to know.
advise them to like take their phone case off and leave it in a well aerated place and these kinds of things, because
Yeah.
it fucking makes phones cook, dude.
And you
Like
got a newer phone too, so that's
I
running
got
a
an
lot of RAM
S9
or processing
Plus, and
power.
it's not running
Wow.
anything but this. And it's not really about that. It's really more about the case being on it.
Oh.
And then like on top of, if it's actually overheating again because I called back too quick, but if you don't take the cases off and you like put it in your pocket or some shit, it's a problem. Anyways, I'm gonna cut out anyways because it's been like an hour, and so I'm gonna fucking head out because I don't know how long.
And I think there goes Zach. Well, let's see. Okay, bye, Zach. It's cool. He's probably listening to the stream elsewhere. So that's night to Zach, guys. And Zach, let's see. Brittany said, you sound like Ed from Crank Yankers. It's been a while since I've heard a Crank Yankers thing, but I do remember that. I think it's the dolls, right? The or puppets or anime or like hand puppets, but they do prank calls and stuff. So it's kind of cool. But okay, night, Zach. Have a wonderful night. Glad to have you on the show. Like on our show together. So Zach will be back Wednesday. There's a train going by. Roll up the window here. And actually, let's see. We'll leave Zach in for now because it looks like his phone's there. It just might have died and not dropped yet. It dropped. There we go. Okay. Angela said yes for syzygy. So the yoke with the sun. I really am super digging that. Let me change the settings on here real quick. I was matching Zach because he's got let's go. We can do that. Hi guys. Yoking with the sun. Syzygy. That's a funny one to say, man, until you like get it down. Syzygy. Cool. So let's see. Let me dip to the chat. See what if you guys have anything in here that we missed. I think at the start of the sword conversation, I think we should ditch guns, go back to swords. Way cooler. Yeah, way cooler and like more honorable, more it's one thing to shoot a gun and kill somebody, right? Not that hard. I mean, there certainly are people who could fire off a bunch and they don't have any control and don't know what they're doing and could miss a target right in front of them. But in general, it's not very hard. You don't got to train yourself much to use a gun, that much to actually have effect with it. That's why I talk about getting a shotgun. It's one of the best self-home defense protection tools because of the spread on it and just really easy to use. And you just kind of point and shoot, and the spread will take care of the accuracy. So there's a lot there that doesn't take much skill. So I'm not saying it's bad. That's cool for dynamics and whatever, but as far as like a general tool, if we're going to pick one weapon for people, I mean, if you got rid of guns and you had to actually do sword, like fight, sword to sword combat, like it really comes down to your effectiveness, right, and your skill set with that weapon and that tool. So I think, unless there's something else in here, which I don't think we have, I think we might just call it an early night, guys. We'll have an hour show called an early night. This one could be about what? Symbiosis, Synarchy, symbiosis, and syzygy. That's what it is. So, yeah, I think we're going to wrap this up, guys. We really appreciate the time. I know our shows are all over the place. The other night we had a 6-hour show. It's been a while since we've done that. That tends to happen, I think, more so with when Kevin comes on and just chatting. Kevin's on the East Coast, so he's 3 hours ahead. So for him, let's see, that show went from 8 to 2. So that was at 5 in the morning for him. Those are his normal hours. He's out making music and doing his own thing. So, and I'm pretty flexible with my my time on that. Usually I just go with the flow of the conversation and see where that goes. So, yeah, on that note, I guess I will say love you guys. We love being here for the conversation. Love everyone here in past, present, and future. Well, I guess past, how would that work? Because like you can talk to people in the present, right there in the chat and live viewing now. And then there's going to be future people who may see it in the future. What about past? How would that integrate? Maybe from the future, we go back into time and watch a video or something of someone. So you saw it in your past from the future. You went back to that past, so you're present in it. So it's all of them at the same time. How about that? This is the Expanding Understanding podcast. Love you all. Love you too, Willow. We are Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday nights. We have links below. We have several other channels on the show. Angela Miller, who's in the chat right now, she has a show called Women's Work. She did this afternoon, which was, I've heard was amazing. I didn't see it, but I've had several people report, and so check that out. And then we've got several other shows as well on the channel. So the links and everything are down in the description below. And we will be back on Wednesday. So love you all very much. Say I love you in sign language. Have a wonderful, wonderful night, and we will catch you guys soon. Bye.